Welcome to the HR Empowerment Podcast, where we will uncover strategies and new insights from HR professionals who discuss up-to-date regulations, best practices, and the most pressing topics like diversity and equity, leadership, dealing with difficult situations, and much more that affect your bottom line and business. Thanks for joining us.
Hi, everyone, and welcome back to HR Empowerment. I'm Wendy Sellers, the HR lady. I am your host. I'm a consultant, an author, and a speaker with 30 years of experience guiding organizations from startups to enterprises of about 5,000 employees. Our co-host, JC, could not make it today. However, we have an amazing guest, Caroline Taylor from the Oxford Group and co-author of the upcoming book, The Neglected Acts of Leadership. Hey, Caroline, welcome to the show.
Hi, Wendy. Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for having me on the show today.
Yeah, thanks for calling in from overseas. Hey, I understand that, you are a highly experienced and executive leader, coach, and organizational development consultant with about the same 3 decades of experience as me. And you're also the managing director of the Oxford Group. Tell me a little bit more about yourself and how you got to where you are today.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, sad to say that it's 3 decades, really.
Right?
On that and think, gosh, that flew by. But yeah, I mean, I am the managing director of the Oxford Group. We are a management and leadership development consultancy, so we work with large organizations across the globe. My background is really doing all things leadership related and organizational development. So I've got quite broad experience across a number of different sectors within a global organizational environment. So and through the course of that 30-year period, I've had the privilege of working with some exceptional leaders at all stages of their career, facing into the complexity and the challenges of leadership. So I'm really delighted to be here today and to be having this conversation.
I love it. Now, your book's out already, correct?
It is, yes,
Yes.
it is that.
Well,
Yeah.
tell us a little bit about, I love the title, by the way, The Neglected Acts of Leadership. Nah, there's never any neglected acts, right? What are, in maybe this is in your book or maybe this is just in your head. What are the 1 or 2, acts leaders routinely overlook? Hopefully not intentionally. And why do they matter now in 2025, as we just said, more than, 3 decades ago, even just 5 years ago?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, where this book came from was really through conversations with the work that we do with leaders. And you're absolutely right to say that these acts are not things that people intentionally neglect. These are things that kind of just get forgotten about in the busyness of leadership day-to-day activity. So what we wanted to do with the book was almost to normalize that and to say, look, that's okay. We all forget these things from time to time, but how can we just maybe shine a light on those and I guess highlight the fact that these are really fundamental acts of leadership that turn the dial in terms of your leadership impact. So just to kind of introduce you to the 3 acts, as we call them. So they are thinking time, trust building, and time for self. And if we start with thinking time, so we know that leaders are constantly being told to be more strategic, to be more authentic, to look outside, to take a balcony view. But the reality of their day-to-day existence is that they're in back-to-back meetings.
Yep.
They're bombarded with emails. They have urgent decisions to make. And they're literally, at the moment, we're noticing that they're just lurching from one meeting to another and kind of reacting, really, and not really making decisions from a conscious and deliberate space. So that's sort of the first one that we're talking about here. And then the next one is trust building. And so we're noticing that I guess this has had a bit of a knock post-COVID, really, as organizations have become more hybrid and dispersed working more commonplace. And so it's sort of pushed some of those more relational aspects of leadership out to the margins. And so what we're saying is that in order to deliver the results, to manage the risk, to drive the change, whatever it is you're trying to achieve in your organization, you have to do that with a bedrock of trust that sits underneath. So, our call is that without trust, those other leadership aspects aren't sustainable. So we need to give a bit of focus to that.
Agree.
And then the third act is all around time for self. And I think this one is well talked about. But it's perhaps the most emotionally complex of the three, because there's often so much guilt attached to.
I was just going to say that word, the guilt. It's so huge.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. And there's a worry that it feels indulgent or selfish. But what we know is that we don't, if we don't lead well if we're not looking after ourselves. So we talk about how that needs to be more of a disciplined focus for leaders. And I guess all of this has been compounded post-pandemic, and in the face of all the complexity that we're facing into economically, politically, just changing workforce expectations. So these three acts we think are really critical right now to address and continuously remind ourselves of.
Yeah, I love that you first brought up, just taking time to think and not just react, but so many businesses are just in the reactionary mode, and me included. I find myself once in a while going, ooh, I didn't think that through, I reacted. And so I've been trying my best, because we're an email driven world. As you said, we're mostly remote. Even if you're not remote, even if you have a person sitting like 5 feet down the hall, you're sending them an email versus getting up and talking to them, right? And I find myself lately going, all right, just put that in draft, Wendy. Don't send it, put it in draft, and then think about that. Like, no one's going to fall off the planet Earth if you don't send that right now. But we've been so trained to react. And I think our world is suffering from that. That's a whole other conversation. But you brought up, COVID. So I can't believe we're 5 years from COVID, at this point in time. It seems like it was yesterday, then it also seems like it was 30 years ago. But, coming out of COVID, 5 years from COVID, how can leaders, start to intentionally rebuild trust in any environment, but definitely in environments that they're either remote or hybrid. And then on top of that, we have this constantly changing workplaces. Do you have any routines that managers can adopt?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, rebuilding trust, as I said previously, I think it's really essential and quite an urgent leadership challenge of our time, really. And the pandemic obviously disrupted where we work, how we relate to each other. Teams are more fragmented. I guess the informal interactions just aren't there so readily anymore. And those small moments of just laughter and fun and joy, they've kind of fallen by the wayside. It's not quite the same when you're dealing in a virtual environment. So we're talking about how to build trust back in a really intentional way. And one of those things is around consistency. So leaders really need to make space to create those informal spaces and to inject some of that informality into the flow of work. So not just be there going into a meeting, for example, talking about, the task of the day or the focus of that meeting, but to be really intentional, maybe with having some check-ins, for example. So, how are you doing? The basic stuff. What did you get up to at the weekend?
Right.
What's going on in your world at the moment? So just those small little signals of taking time to really understand the person you're speaking to and to understand what kind of state of mind or frame of mind they might be coming into that conversation with. So that's one thing, just kind of consistent check-ins. One of the other things we talk about is just the need to give a little bit more communication and explanation and narrative around decisions, and not to assume that information is received and understood, for example. So and within that, it's okay to change your mind on things, but to then narrate why that happened. So, you know, it may be a change of direction on a project, for example. So, you know, we're changing this decision on this project because we've got some more data, and therefore it's come to light that this is no longer the right course of action, and this is why we're making that course correction piece. And just to take the time to make sure that everyone understands that, and that there's that sort of flow of conversation, that flow of communication, and flow of I guess the cascading of that thought process that
Yeah.
you've gone through.
Yeah, I think it's so important. Just stay in touch with your employees, not just on a business level, but on a personal level. I like how you said, like, you know, if you knew they were doing something over the weekend or taking a special vacation, you know, checking in, how did that go? You know, they were
Yeah.
building a shed in the yard that weekend. How did it go? How do you feel? Was it difficult? Letting that person know that I see you as a person and I
Yeah.
care about you. It's so important. I wanted to share with you some stats. I found two different sets of stats, and they're actually about the same information. They just read it in a different way. You know, that trust in employers is declining. Only 75% of employees say they trust their company to do what is right. And that was from New York Post, a great place to work. And then on the opposite side, the negative way of it was just 23 to 25% of employees say they have a strong sense of trust in their company's leadership. So this really shows, you know, a huge, steep trust gap or no trust gap. And that was from an article in People Matters. And it's interesting, you know, I'm here in the US, you're in England, and we are still saying the same thing. So it's not just about, you know, location. It's all over the world that trust in leadership, trust in company leadership is lacking. But for those managers and the HR folks that are listening today, you can help fix that one person at a time. It really needs to be one person at a time. And you, the listener, need to be that one person. Just because they don't trust the rest of your leadership team doesn't mean you can't stop. You know, you can't start going, okay, at least you can trust me, right, Caroline?
Exactly. And yeah, I was going to say it's not just about kind of institutional trust. It's about,
Right.
well, can I trust this person who is right in front of me right now? Do I have a sense that they really understand me, that they're hearing me? Do I feel that they're going to take action on what I'm telling them? Or if they can't take action, they're going to explain why. So it's just, you know, kind of sharing the processing of some of the decision making there, and you know, building that personal human connection between two people.
Right. And so that means for the HR folks that are listening or the small business owners, it's really about having these conversations that we're talking about, and allowing your managers to participate in training on this, because it's easier said than done. You know, learning how to do two-way check-ins. It's not just a one-way check-in, it's a two-way check-in. It's not easy because we keep piling more and more and more on managers and on employees. And so they don't even have that time for that like reflective pause where they could say, let's put a pin on this in this, and let's come back tomorrow and let's all think, as Caroline said before, let's stop to think about what the best solution is. So leaders, it's up to you. Don't blame the top. You know, we can start making changes from wherever you're at. Is it hard? Heck yeah, it's hard. But if you believe in your people, they will in turn, you know, align with you, even if the leadership or lack of leadership above you isn't that great. So, Caroline, you argue that you can't lead effectively without looking after yourself first. Let's talk about that a little bit more. You know, what boundaries, habits, or recovery practices do you and your team coach senior leaders to implement, and how can we in HR normalize this?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, first of all, we support leaders to legitimize the act of taking time for themselves. So that's the first thing to say. And then secondly, for us, it has to be really personal. So not the same thing doesn't work for different people. I think these practices need to feel right for the individual. So, for example, it may be that a gentle walk is all that somebody needs, whereas another leader, it might be a run, or it might be some mindfulness practice, or whatever it is, and it doesn't really matter, but it just has to be serving that person well. One of the challenges that leaders have just in the first instance is how to carve out time to do that. So that's the first place you've got to start, really. And there's no quick fix to this. We have a limited amount of time, so we have to just make time for this. We have to shift our mindset, make it a legitimate activity, and then put some space and some boundaries around that, and tell people that's what I'm doing. Because that's also really good role modeling. If you're then saying, look, do you know what, between this time and this time, I might go for a walk, or I might go to the gym, or I might spend some time doing some mindfulness practice, whatever it is, but you're telling people that it's a legitimate way to spend your time, and that people should expect that of their leaders, to be, taking that time. So that's the first
and
thing.
I just want to interrupt and say, and please take your time off. Please take your time off. Please take your time off.
Yeah.
Especially in the United States, I mean, I don't get negative on companies or anything, but most states do not have laws that say you can cash out your accrued PTO or vacation or sick time. Some states do, kudos to them, but the rest of us, if it's use it or lose it. And so folks, please take your time off, schedule it, take it,
Absolutely.
have a blast, put your out of office on, and do not answer any phone calls.
Yeah, and put that in regularly as well. So don't think, okay, well, I will take some time off when I finish this project, or when I've done this really critical piece of work, because there will always be other stuff that comes in. So you have to kind of make that space first.
Yeah.
And then we talk about little short intentional pauses that can be put into the meeting. So again, this could be a 5-minute break between meetings, where you just take time to go make yourself a drink, whatever it is, just an intentional pause in your day. And there are so many of us that just go into that automated, each meeting is an hour long and I'm back to back and I don't put any space in between. So little things like that. I guess noticing when we might be experiencing what is described as kind of cognitive whiplash. So, for example, you might be in a very, let's say you're in a very financially focused meeting where you're doing some kind of budgeting and making some tough choices about resources. And then you might be flipping into a conversation with somebody who really needs your support. They might be going through a really tough time. So again, just taking that time in between those slots to go, actually, I need to shift my mindset for this conversation.
Yeah.
And then we talk about, we draw on the work of James Clear a lot, actually, and we talk about this concept of habit stacking. And so that's where you attach one habit to another to make it stick. So for me, for example, I love my cup of coffee in the morning. I really like that. And so I make that a reward for going for a walk. So I will go out with the dog, and then afterwards I come back and I have my cup of coffee.
Oh, nice. So you say, nope, you're not getting it before, because then you're not going to go walk.
Exactly. Yeah.
That's awesome. Another thing that I started doing just this year, 2025, is I started blocking out times on my calendar so that if anybody tries to book something with me, for those people that can see my calendar or on my website where it says, schedule me, I'm like, nope, I just put in there fake blocks of like, I'm probably doing something, I'm probably doing research, which I love, and then I go sideways on it. It's still work related, but I'm like, no, I cannot be interrupted at this time. But I've also done the same thing. I block out times where I'm going for a walk, where I have to do something personal, and I'm like, nope, you don't need to know what I'm doing, but you need to know that I'm not available. And I'm really, really trying, still struggling with this as a an entrepreneur. I'm really trying to stick to it and say, no, I'm sorry, you got to book it another time. And it has helped me a great deal to feel like it's okay to go for that walk in the morning, even if though I might be listening to a leadership podcast on that walk. I'm still not at my desk, still, going, okay, I'm doing something for my health, and I'm getting, away from my desk that I seem to be tied to 24/7.
Yeah. In the book, we talk about, because once you've carved out the time, because you're running on busyness all the time, sometimes it's really difficult to then know what to do with that time. So we talk about different types of of time and how you use that time. So it could be just completely freeform, where you do just that, you just stare out the window for half an hour. Or it could be that you have much more kind of focused structure time, which might be, okay, I'm going to organize my diary, I'm going to clean up my emails, or whatever it is. But just to almost say, right, this time, this half an hour, I'm going to spend it doing this. This half an hour is free form, open space thinking.
Yeah, I love it. And I would say also leaders, regardless of what your title is, everyone can be a leader, no matter what your role is to make sure that you're encouraging your peers and, of course, your team members who actually report to you to do that as well. And to be respecting that and saying, okay, even though there's an emergency going on here, no, Caroline said she's taking this time off. Wendy said she's taking this time off. It can wait 30 minutes until they get back. It's so important. And that, to me, is going to improve your trust as a leader. Again, regardless of what your role is, where you're saying, no, my manager or my coworker, even my project manager, is saying, absolutely not. You're not taking that time. You're not canceling that time away from your desk, because we care about you, and you need to take care of yourself. And then hint, I'm going to go take care of myself too.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So there's so many stats. I mean, geez, like anybody who is thinking they wanted to get into leadership or management these days, many people might be 100% afraid of it, because the stats that are out there they're not positive. There is a global leadership forecast of 2025, and it said 71% of leaders report significantly higher stress levels since stepping into their roles. I found that in Forbes. And that, we've already talked about the lack of trust and the drop in trust in managers, but also that 77% of organizations lack sufficient leadership depth across levels. So they may, it drives me nuts, Caroline, when I go to a company that, I haven't worked with yet. I'm an HR consultant. They're like, this is our leadership team. I immediately go, are they really leaders, or are you just putting that title on them? I'm a little opposed when we have self described leadership titles, and they're really just managers who are winging it day by day. So, is leadership even appealing to anyone anymore?
I think it's a really great question, and I'm laughing because I literally was in a client conversation just a week ago where we were discussing that within their context, and just almost to reframe it and think about it from the point of view of what's really fulfilling about that role. But I do think there's something about being really realistic about the role and what it involves, and being clear for people who are thinking about stepping into a people, let's call it a people management position, for example. Right. So whether that's a first step into a management role, or whether you're thinking about taking a more strategic leadership position, I think organizations have a duty of care to really talk about, okay, well, what does this actually mean, and what are the expectations on you as a leader, so people can make conscious choices around that. Because it is tough, it is emotionally demanding. So we do need to acknowledge that. But then we also need to think about, okay, what makes this role really fulfilling? And there's a lot of really positive aspects about being a leader, the ability to influence, to shape things, to have that creativity within a business, to drive collaboration, to increase inclusiveness. So all of these things are really compelling reasons of why it is such an important role, and an important act. Actually, just the act of leadership is really important, irrespective of your hierarchical position. So part of that is also about our collective responsibility to challenge our expectations of leaders, and not to hold them to such high standards, and accept the fact that in this day and age, there is no one person that will have all the answers.
Right.
The course of action will not always be clear. Other people will need to be involved in shaping that. It's inevitable that we're going to make mistakes through the course of our leadership role. So to just be a little bit more, I guess, accepting of some of the challenges of leadership right now as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And to remember kind of what you were going back on is saying that, workers, they want leaders who are investing in relationships, not just outcomes. Of course, companies want outcomes, but companies need to understand that relationships lead to outcomes,
Exactly.
that building the trust, giving everyone time to think and use the brains that we hired them for. And then finally, as you also mentioned, and I completely agree, is making time for yourself. These are the three essential acts for today's leaders, what you cover in the book, The Neglected Acts of Leadership. Now, one other thing I wanted to ask you about is this concept about music, because
Yeah.
your book does talk about how music can help you rediscover the neglected acts of leadership. So talk to me a little bit about that.
Yeah. So, well, first and foremost, the three of us who kind of co-authored the book we love music, so we're really passionate about music, and we find that it is a really deep it's music is deeply human, and it's a real way that people connect. So that's one of the reasons. We wanted to kind of draw, I guess, some parallels from music, because it's a different space to draw those parallels from. We didn't want to perpetuate this concept of heroic leadership. So we drew from a completely different environment, a completely different creative space, and we chose stories from Air, Ray, and Bowie, just around I guess the power of connection, the importance of self, the courage to pause, and we've peppered those stories throughout the book because they really embody some of those leadership concepts that we're talking about. So hopefully it will resonate with leaders. It will just help them to connect with the themes in a different way.
Well, I'm definitely going to be getting it. That's for sure. I'm looking at it right now on Amazon because I too love music, and it just gets to you. Now, I don't know how to play music and I don't know how to sing. I sometimes think I can, but it really does, depending on your mood, it could lift you up, it could bring you down,
Yeah.
it could help you just I played a lot, just I have a lot of high anxiety and stress, a shocker, right? Exactly what we're talking about. And so even just yesterday, which I was my day off, I was about to start working and I was like, nope, nope. I put on some calming music and I was just like, nope, you are in relax zone, Wendy. You are not to work today. You took the day off. And it music helped me, get into that mode until I got something else on my mind to
And
take me off of work.
music is really powerful. When we run programs, for example, we might often use just what was the first album you bought, and immediately you're into a whole story about a person and who they are. So it's a really good way to kind of break down barriers and connect with people as well.
Yeah, and it's like I read a quote, I think it was by Simon Sinek. I'm not 100% sure, that says music is what happens between the notes,
Yes,
and it's the same thing. Trust is what happens between the meetings, right?
exactly. Yeah, exactly.
So regardless if you're in person, virtual, remote, if you're, as I said earlier in the show, even somebody might be at a desk 5 feet away from you, and it doesn't matter if they were 5,000 yards away from you. We tend to send them an email or a text, like get up and talk to them. Or if they're virtual, call them on the phone or say, make it an expectation and a standard operating procedure to use Teams or Zoom or whatever tool that you use to say, yes, it's going to be face to face. Now, I personally think you need to have a policy on that, and you should also have some kind of expectations. Otherwise, people might be sitting there in their pajamas, hair a mess, whatever, and they're like, I don't want to get on this video call. But if it's an expectation for their job that we will be communicating throughout the day, and or when we do have assigned meetings, at least you'll have some notice of it, but you are expected to have the video on. So be careful with the, over here in the United States, the Americans with Disabilities Act, to definitely make sure you're giving notice on that, but not to go sideways here, but I just really getting excited about this. And maybe start your meetings out with some music, right? Maybe you could have a team theme or a team song or something.
Playlist or whatever it is. Yeah.
Absolutely. No, some of the music that's out there is going to get you in trouble with HR. So make sure whatever team song you have definitely gets, aligned with the culture and then the laws too. Well, this has been amazing. Thank you so much for coming to the show. Where can we find your books? I know that I found the book, The Neglected Acts of Leadership, on Amazon. And where else can we look for it?
So it's available in Amazon, and you can order it in bookstores as well. So yeah, it's out there.
Awesome. I will make sure that we put links to the Oxford group, and then as well as the book, The Neglected Acts of Leadership, in the show notes. Other than that, any final words before we wrap up, Caroline?
No, just thanks ever so much for the conversation. And if any listeners want to hear more about the Oxford group, then please do get in touch. We love having conversations. So yeah, it'd be great to talk more.
Awesome. Thanks so much. Thanks everybody for joining. Take care and have a great day.
Thank you for joining the HR Empowerment Podcast, brought to you by Aurora Training Advantage. We hope you've gained new insight and strategies to navigate the HR profession. We look forward to you joining us again on the HR Empowerment Podcast.